G'day, it's Simon from Aussie Built. So thanks for joining us. Doing a bit of work on Packer. The old boy's a 1972 IIa. The aspiration for this one is to get it registered, so eventually. Today is going to be rebuilding of the tail shafts. First thing, we've got to get the tail shaft out. In doing this, look, I don't have a flash toolkit. I've got exactly the same as what most people have probably got at home. Just a toolbox. It's got open-endeds, ring spanners, hammers, pliers, that type of stuff. And to do this job, you don't need any particular tools. In fact, all of the builds that I do here aren't done with any flash tools, no rattle guns or anything like that. Now, to do the tail shafts, it's interesting because all of the Land Rovers, doesn't matter if they're an old Imperial thing, like the Series 2 that's in the background, or it's a more modern Discovery, which is built with metric nuts and bolts, all of them seem to use a 916 spanner on the tail shaft bolts. If you don't have a 916, I've only got one Imperial spanner. You're probably going to find that the 14, 15, somewhere around there is going to be pretty close. It's not exactly the right fit, but it's enough to do the job. Okay, now let's go under and we'll try and pull this shaft out first. I'll show you some tricks. So when working under the car, one of my pet hates is rolling around in the dirt. So prior to working on the car, every single time, get the broom out, sweep under, don't roll under the dirt, and we're all good. About to get under, don't forget 916 and your other spanner. Let's do this. When under the car, I've loosened off all of the bolts and I will take these out. So I just put the nut back on the bolt, so it keeps everything together so that nothing gets lost. Just a habit of mine, a bolt's going everywhere. If a bolt comes off, it usually goes back onto the part that it's come off. Then it saves me having a bucket of bolts at the end of the whole operation. And I know exactly what is needed to go back. Righto, third bolt out. What I'm going to do is leave, whoops, I'm going to leave one bolt in and leave it in loose. So it's going to allow the tail shaft to spin around on the pinion flange. And so we want that still in there so it doesn't fall out. You can see I can rotate that now. That's going to be important because when I do the gearbox, I need to be able to get to the all of the bolts which are around it. And if these are all done up, then I can't spin it because the wheels are on the ground. So if I have one bolt only in there, then I can spin the tail shaft and get to all of the bolts on the back of the gearbox. Now up at the gearbox end, so that'll allow me to get my spanner under there and I can access these bolts. So loosen them right off. And then once that's done, I can rotate the gearbox and I can work my way all around to the other bolts which are on there. Righto, it's the last bolt to come out and the front of the tail shaft is now separated from the gearbox. Boom. So that should be off. There you go, it's being held by the cross member just here. And back at the other end, that bolt's ready to come out. It's only finger tight. So that's all that's holding this end of the tail shaft. So out we pop and the tail shaft is out. All right, there we go. Keep it clean. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is measure the uni joints because we want to make sure that we've got the right part. To do that, we're going to grab a set of verniers. I'm going to be using digital verniers, and I've got two little nuts here, so it doesn't matter what you use, but we're going to use these for measurement spaces. Next, we're going to clean the unis. So we need to do that so that we can get an accurate measurement on it. We don't have to be accurate to 1/100th of a millimeter or anything like that, but we need to make sure that we're getting the right part out of the catalogue, confirmed by the measurements. The problem with a lot of Land Rover tail shafts is that many of them have come out with 1300 size tail shafts or uni joints. Some of them have come out with 1310 sized uni joints. So even on this 2A over here, it's in that period where it could have come with anything. Actually, a lot of Land Rovers are like that. So we will measure that. So before we do that, we don't want to measure any of the dirt, so we'll give that a bit of a spray with WD. That'll just help break down the grease and oil which is in there. Flip it over, do the other side. So let that sit, grab a rag, wipe it out. And so what we're trying to do is just minimize the buildup which is on there. So it doesn't have to be so spotless that you can eat off it or anything like that, but we do need to be probably within a couple of points of a millimeter. Okay, now to do the measurements, I'm going to be using the digital verniers. Because in these tail shafts, the cap of the uni joint is recessed in to the yoke, we can't actually measure them accurately with a set of verniers because it's in the hole. So what I do is I drop a nut in there and I measure from the top of the nut. Now, need to have one of those on both sides, and we will need to know what the cumulative height of those two are. And the way I do that is I just put them into the verniers and I gain that measurement. And so you can see there that the measurement is just under 14 millimeters, so it's roughly 14 millimeters. And once I've got that measurement, I zero. And so when I'm using those two nuts as a measurement device on the tail shaft, I can now make the verniers allow for that, so I don't have to do any of the mathematical calculations. When I close those verniers again, we can see that we've got a negative 13.95 millimeter reading. Okay, so for the measurement, what I will do is put one nut on the front, put one nut on the back, vernier calipers get opened up, and they will measure across the top. We've got a measurement of 82.06 on the verniers. The next measurement that we want is we want to know what the uni diameter is. And so we're going to measure the circle in here. So close the verniers, we'll re-zero them back to 0, and using the other side of it, we'll take an internal measurement. And we've got a measurement here of 26.83. Trying to see what the uni joints look like. Here's a new one that's come from Hardy Spicer that we can open up and have a look at. Got circlips. This is what they look at. So what we've just measured is the diameter of these parts here. So that's called the cap bearing. Okay, I just call them the cap for short. And we've measured across the uni joint from the cap to the cap. Okay, so we've come up with a measurement of about 82 millimeters from top of the cap to the top of the cap, and we've had roughly about 27 millimeters diameter on the cap. And so what that tells us out of the parts catalogue is that that's going to be a 1310 sized uni joint, which is in there. I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about the uni joints because Land Rover can be a bit complex with them. And so when we talk about the uni joints in terms of sizing, what we're generally talking about is making the diameter, the measurement across the T here bigger, and the bigger you go, the more torque the uni joint can take. The other way that they can increase the capacity of the uni joint is by increasing the cap diameter, so putting a bigger bearing in that. So inside that cap is a trunnion, what's called a trunnion. So that part there is the trunnion, and inside here what we've got is a set of needle rollers. You can see that there's grease switches on there, so that grease is used to hold the needle rollers in there while it's being used. And you can see that around the end there's a black seal, which hopefully will keep the grease in and the water and mud out. So normally the standard size uni on a Land Rover is a 1300. And so it's the same 27 millimeter cap which is on there, but the distance from here to here is about 74.5, maybe 75 millimeters. So this is the size of the factory Land Rover upgrade. So early on, they went to a bigger uni, I assume, to give it more life and probably transmit more power, particularly with this particular one, which has got the 6-cylinder motor in it. But I think they were going through a period of trying to make everything the same, and so they ran that through the entire fleet, as far as I'm aware, of the Series 3 Land Rovers. Okay, so this 1310, it's same bearing caps, but the T, that was increased in size from about 75 millimeters out to about 82 millimeters in height, and so that gave the increase in torque capacity purely by making it longer but not bigger. There are other options which you can get to try and increase the strength of that. So after this particular type, the 1310, Glyn Lewis do what's called a 2020. And so the 2020 is the same height as the 1310. It's basically like a 1310, but it's got big caps on it. So if it was a Hardy Spicer product, for example, they would probably just call it a 1310 big cap. It's not a Hardy Spicer product, however. But if you're hearing about the Glyn Lewis Mega CV, it's exactly the same as a 1310, bigger bearing which is on it. And of course a bigger uni comes with it, and it's got bigger trunnions which are in it. So they've increased the capacity by having bigger, stronger bearings in it. So if you're running the Hardy Spicer product though, you can achieve exactly the same thing by going from a 1310 like this up to a 1330. So the 1330 has exactly the same cap diameter at about 27 millimeters, but again they've increased the size of the T. They've changed it from this one, which is a 1310 at about 82 millimeters. They've increased the size of the 1330 to about 92 millimeters, so it's about 10 millimeters bigger. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about percentages or proportions, then you can see that the torque capacity that these unis can handle will go up. Now, Hardy Spicer did do a big cap version of the 1330, so it went 10 millimeters bigger in the T, and they also went bigger in the cap. So the caps went from about 27 millimeters to about 30 millimeters. It's only 3 millimeters, but it's going to make a big difference. If you think that the 1330 is not strong enough, so a lot of the heavy duty sort of rock crawling, high power output unis will go to what's called a 1350. So the 1350 has retained the same T size as the 1330 at about 92 millimeters, but it's gone to the big cap. So it's got a 30 millimeter, it's actually 30.16 millimeter cap size, which is in there. Okay, so it's increased in size to increase capacity, and it's also increased in bearing size to increase the torque capacity. Okay, so that's the Spicer. We've taken the measurements. We now know that the tail shaft, which is in this particular vehicle, has got the 1310 size. So I've whipped down to the shops and buy that. So if you're looking for the part number for the one that's used for the Land Rover, K513XR. So in 2024, it's about a $25 item for a Hardy Spicer product. So the Hardy Spicer products are usually pretty good. If you're looking for a better uni joint, you're probably going to be going directly to someone like Tom Woods in the United States or something like that. That's got a uni joint that's made with stronger materials than what the standard product is. If you're interested in having a look at what the difference is between them, look, the products look very, very similar. So this one's the Hardy Spicer. You can see that we've got the caps on the end, and we've got the grease nipple, which goes into the middle of the T, and then it will distribute across to the bearings internally. So if you see the Tom Woods one, so saying still looks exactly the same. However, so with this particular one, so rather than the grease nipple going in, so it has a grease nipple that is on the end of the cap, one of the caps, and the grease is still distributed through the uni to the other bearings which are in it through the end rather than through the middle. So there's still passages which are in the middle of there, and all 4 bearings will get greased. But other than that, it still looks pretty much the same. Different bearing type, different seal type which is on it, but that's about it. And that can be used interchangeably into any 1310 tail shaft or whatever size you need. I'd also just like to say that despite talking about the Hardy Spicer standard type uni joint, it's a quality joint, and the Tom Woods one, so I have no affiliation with them. Both of the products I've used, these products I buy myself, so you know, there's no business type connection there or sponsorship or backing or anything like that. They're just good solid products that I prefer to use rather than generic or not known brands. This tail shaft that I'm working on, this is a factory Land Rover tail shaft. It's what came with the car from the factory. Yeah, so it's not a Tom Woods product, it's not a Hardy Spicer product or anything like that. Righto, we're going to pop the circlips out of this now so that we can get the uni out. Prior to doing that, make sure you've got glasses on. These things will go flying, and if it gets you in the eye, you're going to lose your eyes. So, righto, let's have a look at this. So now we need to get these circlips out. So the circlip retains the uni joint in there. So there's different types of circlips. This particular type looks like you can probably just get in there with the screwdriver and pop the thing out. So that looks like it's just about to pop out now. So there we go, and we just lever that all the way around until we've got the part out. So just be warned that these things can fly. So hopefully not hit or break anything. So that one's just come out. So that's the shape of that particular circlip. So if we were looking at replacing it with a Tom Woods one, so we've got this type, and so with this one you can just squeeze the circlip with a set of pliers and close it up. So the other type is similar to what Hardy Spicer used, which is that one, and to close that one up, so you would be using a set of circlip pliers, so to squeeze that together. Okay, so righto, once that's done, I'll do the other side now and we'll keep going. Once all of the circlips are out, the next thing we need to do before removing all of this is to take the grease nipple out. And so little dude there, so we'll just do that with the socket. If we start moving this uni around too much before we do that, it'll get stuck in. So one of those, and out it comes. That's the unit. Now we're ready to start drifting these joints out. So to do the drifting, we're going to need a hammer, we're going to need a drift. Now this drift I've just made up from 20 nominal bore, so it happens to fit the size here. It's a 27mm bearing cap which is in there. 20 nominal bore is 27mm also, so it should fit in. Now it's going to be too tight a fit, so all I've done here is linished the surface, which is just sanding the surface. But if you file it down, if you put it into a machine and lathe it, that's perfectly fine. I'd also put a little chamfer on it, little 45-degree angle around here, just to try and control the burring when you hit it. The bearing caps are made of hardened steel, so they don't tend to deform too much, but the drift certainly will, and you can see that by the mushrooming on the head of it where it gets hit by a hammer. Going to put the uni joint over the top of the table leg. That just controls the bounce. Drift goes over the top, and then we're going to start hitting it with a hammer. Do that. We can see that the bearing cap on the other side has dropped all the way to the bottom. This time what I'm going to do is grab a 27mm socket. Now it's a particularly weird socket to have in your kit, however, that is the wheel nut size of a Land Rover, and it also just happens to fit the bearing cap of a uni joint. So we're going to put the socket underneath, Then we can continue to try and drift the uni all the way out. Just check it doesn't move too much. When that's all the way down, you can hear that that gives a slightly different noise. So it's coming out, a little bit more to go by the looks of it. Usually this will stop rocking once you've gone all the way down. So a few more hits, we're just about there. And bearing cap comes out, that's one. Oops. You can see the seals come apart on that. You can see half of the seals on my bench here. So this time we're going to turn it over. We're going to go in the opposite direction. With this being 20 nominal bore pipe, we can go straight over the top of the trunnion and it will bear directly onto the uni joint T, and we're going to punch back in the opposite direction. Okay, once we've got that tapped down, we're going to sit that on a socket, drift back in, and tap the bearing cap through. Okay, that should be just about there. Boom, and out we come. Okay, so drift back out and hopefully the uni joint will come apart. That's one half done, tail shaft out of the way. Okay, now for the socket flange, we're going to do the same again. So sit it on the end, drift in, we'll drift the uni joint down. Flat on the bottom, onto the socket, tap it through. Hear the change of noise, bearing out, flip it over. You can see here that we've got some misalignment. That's what causes it to jam when you're trying to knock it back, so we need to make sure that that relocates back into the hole. I'm going to give it a quick squirt of WD. Make sure that the thing's lubricated and happy. Oh, before we go, yep, drift in. See the bearing caps down at the bottom, onto the socket. Way down, bearing caps out, drifter's stuck. Okay. So tap on the other side, see if we can free it up. Got to be careful not to hit the yokes, otherwise you will never get it back together again. In and there you go, uni joints out. So that, with all of these parts, is going to form the old uni. So we can try and put it back together again. This is not usable anymore. And this one here, there's a bit of cap in that. Okay, so that's now destined for the bin. So that's the part that we're going to replace. These parts need a bit of a cleanup, so we'll just give that a quick cleanup now. For the cleanup, this is coated in grease. What I use is a light oil, so just WD, So what I find is that light oil is really good at breaking down the grease, and then the whole mix is a lot easier to get off from there. So we'll let that sit overnight, and then tomorrow we'll come back and attack it again, and we'll finish the cleanup, start the reassembly. Okay, now we're going to start assembling the uni joint. So out of the box, got the right size, a couple of parts in it to open this thing up. Got the uni joint with the caps, got the circlips, just put the circlips off to the side. The grease nipple, going to take that out just so we don't get that damaged during the assembly. Put it in there. Okay, and the bearing caps. I'm going to take these off carefully. So we need to make sure that those bearings, the needle roller bearings, don't become dislodged. Otherwise, we'll probably end up throwing the whole uni out. Oop. Okay, just put that somewhere where we can keep it clean, not get any grease in it. Now when we do these fits, we're going to use a mallet, so we're not hitting that with a hammer at all. You can see on the top here, you can see that we've got a machined area, which is here. So that part there is the press fit, and this part here, which is rougher, that's slightly narrow, very slightly narrow in diameter. And so that'll help us to put this in, get it into the right spot, and to be able to tap it down. Okay, so when I put that in, going to sit the yoke over the top of it. You can see that that's gone a fair way in already. Now I must keep the uni joint in place, and that must be in the bearing when I tap it around. If that's not in place, all of those needle bearings, they're going to fall out, and then we start the whole lot again. Okay, so we've now got that into the right location. We're going to get our mallet, just going to clean the surface of it to make sure I don't get any grit in there. Let's give it a tap tap. Okay, that's driven most of the way in. We're going to sit that on top of a wheel nut. Remember I was saying that the wheel nuts are 27 millimeters. It also just happens that a Land Rover wheel nut will also be about the right size so that we can keep pressing that through. What we're going to do is press this a bit further through to make sure that our trunnion is out far enough so that we can put the cap in the other end, and then press the whole lot back again into the center. At the moment, if I try and put the cap onto here, tap it down, all of the needle bearings will fall out. So what I'm going to do is wheel nut goes on there. I'm going to sit the whole lot on the wheel nut, give it a bit more tap tap, knock it through. Hopefully not knock through my fingers. See, that's moving through now. That's in about the standard position. Let's not pop it all the way through. We just sort of gauge how much it's hanging on by there. There's still a bit more that I can do. I think that'll be enough. Now I can see that I've got a little bit of debris which is on the top of the trunnion. What I'm going to do is make sure that all of that gets cleared off. I don't want that grit getting into the bearing, which will eventually lead to a failure. Okay, that's now cleared off. Next bearing cap goes over the top. Into place, and you can see that that is now hopefully enough to retain all of the needle bearings in it. You can bring that down a fraction just to try and support it. Give it some tap tap. Okay, we've now got that flush. So once we've got that flush, those bearings can't go anywhere. It's a little bit easier to actually drift it in than to use a rubber mallet. The drift is a bit more efficient in terms of the energy. Just until I can see the bottom of the circlip groove. Oop. A little bit too far. Oops. What I'm going to do here is, before I go too far, put the bottom circlip in. This just might help control it from going too far. In it goes into the groove. Make sure it's in the groove. Give it a spin. As I've spin it, a little bit of grit's come out, so it's a bit of a cleaning process. Now I can drift it a little bit more down. Till it bears against the circlip, which is right there. Next circlip. And it goes. Hear it click in, hear it click in. We'll give it a spin to make sure that it's seated properly. now that's half done. So we've made sure that the grease nipple, when it goes into here, it's facing out from the flange yoke. It's so that we can access it when we grease it. Righto, next step goes into the other half. And we'll start to put that together. So we're going to put the assembly together. Just square that up. So that's quite tight. That's normal at this stage. It's together. Bearing cap goes in. Yoke goes into the bearing cap. Let's lay it over. Get the whole assembly down. Let's tap it down. Okay, so once we've got that punched through, quick cleanup. New cap goes in. We can see that this is almost level. Make sure that there's no grid in that. Cap can go on. Can locate into place. What we're going to do this time is we will get the drift out and we will drift it down. And before we get too far from here, we'll pop the circlip in. Circlip pliers. Spin. It over again. A bit more drifting. Bit more. I think we're up against the circlip. Circlip in. Drive it home. The screwdriver. That's now clicked in. Okay, so we're all together. Now in this we can see that the uni is quite tight. That's happened because of the assembly process. The caps are squeezing on the uni joint at the moment, so what we need to do is tap it around so that the caps come just ever so slightly out. That gives a little bit more relief so that the uni can move freely. To do that, flip it over. Okay, we're done. Righto, grease nipple. Still sitting in my socket. We can go back in. There you go. So So what we've just done here is a field repair for a universal joint. So if you're in the bush, remote country, you've blown a uni joint, so this is how you fix it. This is not necessarily how you would fix it in the workshop. In the bush, the only tools that I've really needed here were hammer, drift, a wheel nut, a mallet, got circlip pliers, very cheap socket set, and spare uni joint, maybe a bit of wood, makes life easier, and good to go. Grease that up, it's ready to go back in the car. Okay, the shaft's now done, it's looking good, and it's ready to be installed. Got the spanners ready to go. Okay, so we've got the front tail shaft in, front bolted up, back bolted up. Ooh, don't know if you can see it there. And at the rear, so I've also got the tail shaft done and in. Both tail shafts are in. It's ready to drive. Beast. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been epic. If you enjoy seeing Land Rovers get built, please subscribe. We'll see you next time.